Hey, shalom, Israel. Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shabbarakatham, Yahweh Shemalatham, Bashem, Yahweh Shah. This is ISUPK, started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. And we teach the truth concerning the Bible, that so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are the chosen people of God, the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel, the greatest people to ever walk the face of this earth. You dig? Precinct Officer Howard Moore, ISUPK, Kentucky, Maine. And tonight is our Monday night history class. And before we get into it, I want to invite every so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian. Tune in. Weekly content, ISUPK, Kentucky, of course. Monday night, we got the history class. Tuesday night, Brotherhood class taught by Officer of 1,000, number one, Gabar. Wednesday night, law class taught by Officer of 1,000, ISUPK. And Wednesday night, the podcast. All right, Cry Out, Spill Not podcast. And come listen to these two mighty priests and prophets of the Lord break down all of the viral videos going across the internet. All right, so Monday, history class, Tuesday, Brotherhood class, Wednesday, law class, and Wednesday night, the podcast. And let's go ahead on and get into it, y'all. Let's go ahead on and get into it. All right, I got a straight drop for y'all tonight. Topic of tonight's class is, this is part 3. This is part 3 of Forgotten American Indian Culture. And we finna get into the relationship between so-called Black and so-called Indigenous people. All right, so-called Black and so-called Indigenous people. Because it's been, I think it's been going on for I don't know, probably about 6 months to a year, but it's just finally gotten some it's finally getting attention. All right. This whole thing going on with hip hop music, whatever. You got some people talking about it was Black only. You got some people talking about Puerto Ricans was involved. But the whole thing has been all over hip hop lately. Whole thing has been about a beef between Blacks and Hispanics or Blacks and Indigenous people. All right. But tonight I'm finna give y'all something bigger than hip hop. All right. I'm from the South, so you know the closest thing I get to New York music is Outkast. You dig what I'm saying? Closest thing I get to New York music is Outkast. All right. So I'm from the South. I'm a country boy. You dig? But tonight I'm finna give y'all something. I'm finna give y'all something bigger than hip hop. All right. We're gonna give y'all the relationship between Blacks and Indigenous people. All right. The relationship between so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. And like I said, I got some straight drop for y'all tonight. All right. So first of all, first slide is, who are the Indigenous people of the Americas? All right, here's your source at the bottom. All right, Prescott in his History of Mexico refers to some traditions of the Aztecs as bearing a singular resemblance to those found in the scripture. More or less, does one start with surprise and awe as he notes that the Indians of Florida, a strict observance of those customs as well as religious beliefs as laid down in the book of Leviticus. All right, so it's making a reference to show that the Indigenous people of America are a descendant of the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, now it's also making a comparison with the people of Mexico and the people of the modern day United States. All right, it's making a parallel between the people of Mexico and the people of Florida. Let's walk. Now, let's find out what that relationship is. What's the relationship between so-called Hispanics and so-called North American Indians as well? It says, after the conquest of Mexico by Cortez in 1520, the Aztecs left Mexico and gradually traversed the country until in 1620, we find them in Alabama, where they added other bands to their ranks. So according to the source, in 1520, at the arrival of the Spanish, we see migrations of Aztecs. We see migrations of people in Mexico, all right, so-called Hispanics today, migrating into Alabama. And we see them getting involved with what they call other bands in that area. Let's walk. All right, the British called them creeks from the many small streams that traverse the country. It says, thus the great Aztec Muskogee tribe of the Mexican Empire, vanquished by Cortez, became 100 years later the Creek Confederacy, from which branched the Seminoles. All right. So right here, right away, we have a relationship between Hispanics, so-called Hispanics, and so-called North American Indians. All right. Here's your relationship between so-called Hispanics and so-called North American Indians. All right, the great Aztec Muskogee. All right, Muskogee is the language spoken by the people in the Southeast. All right, we're talking about your Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Seminole, Cherokee, etc. All right, let's walk. All right, it says the Choctaw and Chickasaw, the separated from the Muskogee, now known as Creeks, were once of one tribe before their migration from some distant country to the west to their ancient domain east of the Mississippi River, claims for them a Mexican origin. All right. So we have the Choctaw and the Chickasaw. They say also have a Mexican origin, also showing the links between so-called Hispanics and North American Indians. All right. In this book, The American Indian, it says the Choctaw and Chickasaw descend from a people called the Chickamauga, who were among the first inhabitants of the Mexican Empire. Here's your source. All right. Now let's tie this together. All right. So a brief history of the migration patterns. A brief history of the migration patterns of people from Mexico and Central America and their migration patterns into the southern United States, showing the relationship between so-called Hispanics and so-called North American Indians. Let's walk this down further. The word Geechee, all right, shout out my girl Geechee. It says the word Geechee was used to describe the language of coastal Georgia, particularly those who live near the Ogeechee River. It says Ogeechee may be derived from a Muskogee term. Remember, we just talked about the word Muskogee and how that relates to the Indians in the southern United States. All right, Muskogee term meaning river of the Ogeechee, referring to the Ogeechee people. All right. Now, the Ogeechees were one of the tribes that ended up becoming the Seminole. All right, let's walk this down further. All right, 17th century, the Ogeechee Indians lived in Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina near the Muskogee Indians. All right. We just read that the Muskogee Indians, right, the Indians of the Southeast, the southern United States, have a relationship with the people in Mexico. All right, again, showing the relationship between so-called Hispanics and so-called North American Indians. All right, the Stono Rebellion was a slave revolt, all right, 1739 in the colony of South Carolina. It was the largest slave rebellion in the colonial area. All right, now we finna tie this together. All right, the Stono Rebellion was a slave revolt, September 9th, 1739, in the colony of South Carolina. It was the largest slave rebellion in colonial history. All right, here's an image of the slave revolt. Now, what they don't tell you is that Indians, so-called North American Indian, all right, was also involved in this slave rebellion. All right, we had Indians in the South, in the southern United States, that was also involved in this slave rebellion. All right, Stono Indians referred to an American Indian tribe that historically inhabited the area around the Stono River in South Carolina. All right, we're talking about the so-called Stono Indians. All right, the Ogeechee Indians. You dig what I'm saying? And again, showing that we also had so-called Native Indians, North American Indians that were also involved in this Stono Rebellion. All right, we had so-called Blacks and North American Indians fighting side by side against the expansion of the 13 colonies. All right. In response to the rebellion, the General Assembly passed the Negro Act of 1740. Now, the Negro Act of 1740 made colonial life much more harsh and much more difficult on the slave populations in South Carolina. Now, what happened is this led to what was called the Stono Rebellion, and it was a part of a larger conflict called the Gullah Wars. All right. And again, shout out my Gullah Geechee, man. Shout out to my Gullah Geechee. Now, again, this shows the relationship between so-called blacks and North American Indians, because Indians fought side by side with people that were called runaways or maroons. All right. So again, showing the relationship between so-called blacks and so-called North American Indians. Now, these Gullah Wars were part of a larger war known as the Seminole Wars, all right, specifically highlighting the significant role of escaped slaves from South Carolina Low Country who spoke Gullah that fought against the U.S. military during those conflicts, all right? And what happened was you had slaves, escaped slaves, runaway slaves that were leaving out of South Carolina. You had Indians that were also involved in this slave uprising. And these people fought against the expansion of the 13 colonies, all right, fought against the military of the 13 colonies. And they were fighting on their back foot, again, against the expansion of the 13 colonies. And they joined with smaller groups of Indians in the South. And those people became known as the Seminole today. All right, so the Seminole is a mix of runaway slaves out of South Carolina and smaller groups of Indians that fought side by side against the military of the 13 colonies. All right, again, showing the relationship between so-called Black and North American Indians. Now, this is from Seminole Chief Osceola. All right, Seminole Chief Osceola. And he was referred to as Black. All right, Seminole Chief Osceola was referred to as Black. All right, he said, the white man shall not make me black. I will make the white man red with blood and then blacken him in the sun. All right, this is what Chief Osceola of the Seminoles said about our oppressor. All right, and the Seminole Wars was one of the largest, most expensive conflicts in American history. All right, but Chief Osceola, all right, Seminole Chief Osceola was referred to as a Black man. All right, again, showing the relationship between so-called Blacks and North American Indians. All right, Indian removal, it was also known as the Trail of Tears. All right, 1830, signed by President Andrew Jackson, that initiated the policy of relocating American Indians from the southeastern United States, the Indian Territory, Oklahoma, which included the Seminole. All right, and we just talked about how the Seminole was made up by runaway slaves out of South Carolina. All right, people related to today's Gullah Geechee. All right, and a mix of smaller Indian tribes, and they all came together because of their conflict with the 13 colonies. All right, their conflict with the United States, and they all banded together and called themselves the Seminole. All right, 1830, Mexico banned the introduction of enslaved people into Texas. Now, if you're not familiar, all right, Texas at one time was a part of Mexico. All right, and during relocation, when the Indians out the South were being relocated into Oklahoma, a lot of these Southern Indians, for fear of being enslaved, all right, escaped into Texas. Let's talk about it. All right, 1830, slavery was outlawed in Texas. All right, Texas was the last frontier of chattel slavery in the United States. All right, Texas was the last frontier of chattel slavery in the United States. All right, here's your source, Compromise of 1850. This is a primary source. All right, this is a primary source. It says, as slavery does not exist by law and is not likely to be introduced into any of the territory acquired by the United States from the Republic of Mexico. So all of the territory from Texas all the way to California, all right, according to the Compromise of 1850, it says slavery is not likely to be introduced into this area. Of course, as we know, shortly afterwards, slavery was introduced into Texas, all right, by white folks out of Massachusetts. All right, it said a group of Seminoles and Creeks led by John Horse, all right, and Wildcat left Indian Territory, Oklahoma, and traveled to Mexican Texas where they could live without fear of re-enslavement under the fugitive slave law. All right, and again, the Seminoles and the Creeks, all right, were a mix of smaller Indian tribes and escaped slaves out of South Carolina. Again, showing the relationship between Blacks and North American Indians. And again, it says they traveled into Mexican Texas where they could live without fear of re-enslavement under the fugitive slave law. All right, so we had Hispanics, all right, so-called Hispanics, all right, Mexicans welcoming so-called Blacks and so-called North American Indians who were on the run from the Fugitive Slave Act. All right, so we have a camaraderie between so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. Now, after 1865, when slavery was abolished, you had some of these groups, all right, that were mixed with Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian. After 1865, after slavery was abolished in Texas, Juneteenth, all right, you had a lot of these groups migrate back into Texas, and that's where your Seminole Indian Scouts comes from. All right, there's several big Indian cemeteries, all right, in Texas. And that's where your Seminole Indian Scouts come from. Now, a little bit about the Seminole Indian Scouts, all right, it's a group of people that later became known as Buffalo Soldiers. All right, here goes John Ward, all right, Buffalo Soldier, all right, is of Seminole Indian descent. All right, he made it to the level of sergeant in the U.S. military. All right, 24th Infantry Indian Scouts. All right, Seminole Days is an annual celebration held in Brackettville, Texas by the Seminole Indian Scout Cemetery Association. And in Mexico, they celebrate this same holiday on Juneteenth. All right, in a town in Mexico, you have Seminole Indians who were celebrated on the holiday of Juneteenth. All right, you have Juneteenth actually being celebrated in parts of Mexico till this very day. All right, you have Juneteenth that's celebrated in Mexico to this very day. All right, showing the relationship between so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right, showing the relationship between Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right, here's a Seminole Negro Indian Scout flag. And here's the celebration in Texas that goes on today. All right, this woman here on the shirt, she's got the same image that I just showed. All right, people who are descendants of escaped slaves out of South Carolina, all right, that banded with smaller groups of Indians, and they collectively started calling themselves Seminole. All right, after Indian removal, these people escaped into Texas. When Texas became part of the United States, and started to introduce slavery into Texas, these people moved further south into Mexico. After 1865, when slavery was abolished in the United States, you had some groups migrate back into Texas, and that's where your Buffalo Soldier regiments come from. And a form of Gullah can be found in Mexico. You had people to speak the Gullah Geechee language in Mexico. Here's your source. All right, you had people to speak the Gullah Geechee language in Mexico. All right, again, showing the relationship between Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. Look here, man. Look here. I don't know nothing about hip hop like that. I don't give a damn if Puerto Ricans were there in the beginning or not. All right, I could care less. All right, but here's what I do know. Here's what I do know. That so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are in fact the same people. All right, the Gullah Geechee language is spoken in parts of Mexico today. All right, why? Because the Gullah Geechee are a part of the groups that form the Seminole Indians. All right, Seminole Indians have Gullah Geechee blood running through their veins. All right, Seminole Indians have Gullah Geechee blood running through their veins. And again, during Indian removal, you had groups of Seminoles that fled into Texas and then fled into Mexico. After 1865, went back into Texas. Now, during that time in Mexico, again, I just showed you had people in Mexico to celebrate Juneteenth. And right here, you've got a family in Mexico that are a mix of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indians. All right, a family in Mexico today that are a mix of so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indians. You see, they still wearing the women. The women still have Seminole attire on. All right, the women are still dressed in Seminole attire. And I'm going to show you in a minute that this cowboy hat is also part of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, he's a descendant of Buffalo Soldiers. He's got the Buffalo Soldier regalia on his hat. All right, she's still wearing her Seminole dress. All right, 1873, Seminole Indians served as Buffalo Soldiers and Scouts. All right, again, showing the relationship between Blacks and North American Indians. All right, 1873, Seminole Indians served as Buffalo Soldiers. All right, 13 enlisted men from 6 officers from these 4 regiments earned the Medal of Honor. In addition to military campaigns, the Buffalo Soldiers served a variety of roles along the frontier. Now, the frontier, meaning out west, all right, Buffalo Soldiers were used to pretty much clear the way for westward expansion. All right, Buffalo Soldiers participated in the Spanish-American War, the Philippine-American War, World War I, and World War II. All right. All of America's conflicts, you had Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians fighting in every single conflict in American history. And you're going to tell me that Blacks and Hispanics ain't the same people? All right. Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians fought in every conflict in American history. All right. Blacks, Hispanics, and American Indians fought in every conflict in American history. More Buffalo Soldiers here. All right. More Buffalo Soldiers. All right. Now, as this was going on, sidebar, all right, Virginia Vital Statistics Bureau classified all non-reservation Indians as Negro. Virginia Vital Statistics Bureau classed all non-reservation Indians as Negro. Again, showing the relationship between Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. I bet you ain't learned this in history class. All right, America's first cowboys were black. Here's your source. America's first cowboys were black. There'd be no such thing as cowboys without black folks. All right, Bass Reeves. All right, if you're not familiar, this is where the story of the Lone Ranger comes from. All right, this is the real Lone Ranger. All right, Bass Reeves is the real Lone Ranger. But something you probably didn't know is he was born and raised in Indian Territory. All right, the real Lone Ranger was born and raised in Indian Territory. All right, the cowboy hat as we know it today evolved in the 1800s, influenced by the Mexican sombrero. All right, the cowboy hat is indigenous to Mexico. And as we talked about earlier in class, the Indians in the Southeast, all right, the Indians from the Southern United States, all right, the Seminole, right, the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Creek, all right, they have their origins in Mexico also. But the cowboy hat is indigenous to Mexico. All right, the cowboy hat is indigenous to Mexico. Look, white folks could never be this fly, y'all. All right, white folks could never, ever be this fly. All right, North American Indian rocking the cowboy hat. You see he's rocking the feather. All right, we got black and brown solidarity right here. All right, rocking the cowboy hat. All right, traditions of brass band music exist in Indian country. All right, the phrase Native American music may not suggest tubas and trumpets, but march music has been a part of American Indian culture for over a century. There's a history of the early 20th century when all Indian bands toured the U.S. and abroad. All right, Forgotten American Indian Culture, Part 3. All right, you probably never heard of the American Indian influence on marching bands. But marching band culture is huge in the South. All right, Indian marching bands were performing in the mid-1800s for parades, fairs, exhibitions, attracting both native and non-native audiences. All right, so we're giving you, again, Forgotten American Indian Culture, Part 3, the relationship between blacks and indigenous people. And again, I thought about this class, hearing about this beef over hip-hop. Right, this beef over whether Puerto Ricans belong in hip hop or not. All right, but again, I'm from the South. I could care less about what's going on over there. But what I do know is this: I can give you something bigger than hip hop. All right, I can give you something bigger than hip hop. All right, I gave you the origin of the Seminoles. All right, the origin of the Seminoles is a combination of blacks and North American Indians. All right. Stono Indians that fought in a slave rebellion in South Carolina. All right. We have blacks and North American Indians fighting side by side in the largest slave rebellion in colonial history. We had blacks and North American Indians fighting side by side in the Seminole Wars. We have blacks and North American Indians side by side on the Trail of Tears. All right. We had blacks and North American Indians for fear of re-enslavement, all right, under the Fugitive Slave Act that traveled into Mexico. All right. Again, showing the relationship between so-called blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. Then I gave you where the cowboy hat came from. All right, now I'm giving you where marching band culture comes from. All right, you ever wonder why marching bands halftime shows are so big in the South? All right, this is the origin of marching bands. All right, here's TSU. All right, Texas Southern. You see the cowboy hat? You see the fringes on the shirt? All right, in the same area that Delta blues began, lived many members of this tribe who were of Choctaw descent. One of these men is Charlie Patton, credited by all as the father of Delta blues. All right. Now, Charlie Patton was known to be a mixed race. They said his father was Choctaw and his mother was black. So we have the father of blues music had an Indian father and a black mother. The father of blues music. Now, I'm not sure if you know the history or not, but Mississippi Delta blues is considered the origin of all American music because it influenced all other genres, including rock and roll, R&B, gospel, country, and rap. All right. Now, again, it doesn't matter to me about this whole hip hop thing. This whole thing between blacks and Puerto Ricans, all right, whether Puerto Ricans were involved at the beginning or not. What I do know is that all genres of American music come out of the Mississippi Delta blues. And the father of Mississippi Delta blues, Charlie Patton, had an Indian father and a black mother. All right, and Mississippi is considered the birthplace of all American music. All right, there would be no hip hop discussion right now. There wouldn't even be a conversation between whether or not Puerto Ricans were at the beginning of hip hop. This conversation we wouldn't even be having this conversation right now without Mississippi blues music. Without Mississippi Delta blues, we wouldn't even be having this conversation about Puerto Ricans and hip hop right now. And again, the father of Mississippi Delta blues had a Choctaw Indian father and a black mother. All right, again, showing the relationship between blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right, we've been rocking with each other since the very beginning because we understood that we had a common enemy. All right, blacks and North American Indians fought side by side in the Seminole Wars against the expansion of the 13 colonies. All right, we've been fighting and rocking side by side from the very beginning. All right, our strength is in the unity of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians, not the division of it. All right, our power is in our unity. All right, not our division. All right, country music has its roots in black and indigenous music. All right, traditions that were already established in North America. All right, the origin of country music is black and indigenous music. And I know white folks was pissed about this. I know white folks was pissed about this when Beyonce takes home first country music award at the Billboard Music Awards. Now, I wish I could have been a fly on a wall at a white person's house that night. I know white folks ain't been this mad since they made the Little Mermaid black. I know white folks ain't been this mad since Hard Out Here for a Pimp won a Grammy. I would have loved to have been a fly on a wall in a white person's house that night. All right. Now, since we're on the topic of hip hop, rap music, or whatever, and whether or not Puerto Ricans were at the beginning, we let white folks steal a whole genre of music from us. We're sitting here having a conversation between so-called blacks and Puerto Ricans over the origin of hip hop. And we let white folks steal a whole genre of music from us. So this is the only black country artist that we know. But real quick, man, let me shout out some other black country artists you probably never heard of, right? Holding it down. 803 Fresh, all right, out of South Carolina. King George, you dig? Marcellus the singer. All right, shout out other black country music artists. Again, while we're beefing about so-called blacks and Puerto Ricans in hip hop, we let white folks steal a whole genre of music away from us. All right, history of the two-step. All right, often called the Texas two-step. All right, it's called two-stepping to the local black community. It's as intrinsic to the city as jazz or slow-cooked brisket. All right, that Texas two-step, all right, that line dance has black and indigenous origins. All right, source, Bureau of American Ethnology. All right, it says a considerable proportion of the blood of the Southern Negro of the U.S. is unquestionably Indian. Now, you notice it makes a distinction of the U.S. Why? Because black people in America are not African. All right, black people in America are not African. All right, so what does this show? This shows that without question, that blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are unquestionably the same people. All right, blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are unquestionably the same people. Now, again, we talked about the origin of the cowboy hat coming out of Mexico. All right, a white person can never be this fly with it. A white person can never be this fly with it. All right, blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are unquestionably, all right, white folks could never, ever, ever be this fly because this is our culture. It just don't look right on. All right, it just don't look right on because this is our culture. All right, this is black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, the cowboy hat is our culture. All right, the marching bands, halftime shows, that's our culture. All right, country music, that's our culture. All right, the horsemen of Mexico laid the foundation for Texas cowboy fashion. Denim jeans were originally designed for sturdy workwear for cowboys. All right, denim jeans. Name me one person that don't wear jeans. I'll wait. Name me one person that don't wear jeans. All right, but this is black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, fringes on jackets. Vests, chaps, serving both functional and aesthetic purposes. It protects riders from rain and brush while adding to a dynamic element to their attire. American Indian influences introduce intricate patterns, often seen on shirts, belts, and hat bands. Right, you see the patterns on the brother's shirt? You see the American Indian patterns on the brother's shirt? You think he just decided to wake up one day and put on something like this? Or do you think the brother's aware of what his culture is? Look at the brother right here. You see the Indian patterns on the shirt? All right, that cowboy culture is so-called black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, I don't know if you can see this one too well. All right, everybody knows me know I put that shit on sometime. But you see the patterns in the hat band? See the feather in the hat? All right, that's the culture. That's the culture of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. Like I said, you think he just decided to wake up and put this on? Or do you think this brother knows his culture? All right, again, showing the relationship between blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right, again, I don't know nothing about the origins of hip hop. I don't know if Puerto Ricans were there or not. But what I do know is that blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians are the same people, and we share the same culture. All right, rodeos gained popularity in the late 19th century and became venues for cowboys to showcase their skills and style. Now, remember we said earlier that the original cowboys were blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians, and to showcase their skills and style. Well, we know white folks ain't got no style. All right, they can never be fly like we are, because they don't have the salt. They're not the salt of the earth like we are. And you wouldn't have rodeos without a man named Bill Pickett. All right, there would be no such thing as rodeos without a man called Bill Pickett. All right, all the tricks with the lasso came from Bill Pickett. All right, all the tricks with the lasso came from Bill Pickett. And guess what? Bill Pickett had a black father and a Cherokee mother. This is the real Cherokee Bill. All right, not the man from the movie The Harder They Fall. This is the real Cherokee Bill. Had a black father and a Cherokee mother. All right, and there'd be no such thing as a rodeo without Bill Pickett. All right, showing off the culture. Like I said, white folks could never be this fly with it. White folks could never be this fly with it. All right, source Cowboys and Indians magazine, because the Cowboys was the Indians. The Cowboys was the Indians. What did we say earlier? That blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians were the original cowboy? The Cowboys was the Indians. And again, there would be no rodeo without Bill Pickett. All right, sports. Now, what have I given you so far? All right, I've given you cowboy culture. Right? I've given you the cowboy hat, the boots, the patterns on the shirt, the feathers in the hat. What else I give you? Country music, rodeo. All right, now we finna get into sports. All right, the modern game of basketball has roots in indigenous history. All right, indigenous people have played football for centuries and shaped the modern American football with the invention of the forward pass, the spiral throw, and the handoff fake. All right, all invented by North American Indians. Football had to be trashed before the forward pass, the spiral throw, and the handoff fake. Remember, we read earlier about blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians and the marching band, right? And how big halftime shows are in the South. Well, a halftime show for what? I showed you earlier the indigenous origin of the marching band. Well, they got to perform somewhere, don't they? All right. Sports games, halftime shows are all part of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right. Records from the 17th century show Powhatan Indians played a game similar to modern soccer. All right. Powhatan Indians, 17th century, played a game similar to modern day soccer. The most popular sport in the world comes out of indigenous culture. The most popular sport in the world comes out of North American Indian culture. All right, food. I say this all the time. If you ain't got a food culture, you ain't got a culture. So what did I give you? I gave you sports and halftime shows come from blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right, rodeos, cowboy culture, the cowboy hat. All right, country music. Hell, music period comes from Black, Hispanic, and North American Indians. Now let's get to the food, my favorite part. All right, the most important indigenous American crops include Indian corn, hominy, which is grits, beans, sunflowers, rice, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, peppers, peanuts, avocados, papayas, potatoes, and chocolate. Let's back that up. You see where it says tomatoes? You see where it says tomatoes is indigenous food? And we think spaghetti come from Italian folks? How? If tomatoes come from right here, how can we give credit to Italian folks for spaghetti? All of these foods right here are indigenous to America. And all of these foods are part of our culture. All of these foods are part of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, Indian boiled cornbread is present in Southern cuisine as cornmeal dumplings and hush puppies. All right, hush puppies are part of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture. All right, Southerners cooked their beans in field peas by boiling them as the native tribes. And like the Native Americans, Southerners cured their meats and smoked it over hickory coals, as we still do today. All right, to a far greater degree than anyone realizes, several of the most important food dishes that Native Americans, such as the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Muskogee, we've been talking about these folks all day, is of the southeastern United States live on today is the soul food eaten by both black and white Southerners. For example, hominy is still eaten. Grits, cornbread, used by Southern cooks. All right, cornbread used to be called Indian bread. All right, cornbread used to be called Indian bread. All right, grits, hominy. All right, all of this comes from the indigenous people of the Americas, and it's all part of Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian culture today. All right, next source. It happened on an exploratory day in the Chickasaw Nation in a far-flung corner of Oklahoma. When I cracked open a self-published cookbook, it was shocked by the familiarity of the recipes within. The grits, the cornbread, the sweet potato pie, the chicken and dumplings in the book looked like a replica of my mother-in-law's family recipes in South Alabama. All right, Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians have the same culture. Have the very same culture. All right, in the 1880s, Hispanic women called the chili queens sold chili out in outdoor stands in downtown San Antonio. All right, chili, one of the most popular dishes in America, comes from Hispanic women in San Antonio. All right, one of the most popular foods in America comes from Hispanic women in San Antonio. All right, barbecue is an American tradition of Black and Native Americans. Barbecue, the Black and indigenous roots of an American tradition. All right, barbecue is ubiquitous in America, but the role of Black chefs in indigenous tradition in creating that culture has been largely overlooked. So I'm giving you the food culture, showing you that Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians have the same food culture. But somehow we're not the same people over some hip hop. All right, that's fucking dumb. I'm sorry, but that's fucking dumb. All right, Blacks and Hispanics have had the same culture through the centuries, but all of a sudden now, Blacks and Puerto Ricans are different because of hip hop. Again, that's fucking dumb. It's lucky. All right, Tex-Mex is the most popular cuisine in the United States. Tex-Mex is the most popular cuisine in the United States. All right, Latin Tex-Mex overtaking Italian as America's go-to food. All right, we are the culture of America. Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians, we are the culture of America. I showed it to you with the food. I showed it to you with the music. I showed it to you with the sports and the marching game halftime shows. I showed it to you with the rodeo. I showed it to you with cowboy culture. I showed it to you with us in the military. All right, American culture is the culture of Blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. And let me shout out Texas real quick, man. One of the few white minority states in the whole country. One of the few white minority states in the whole country. But let's drop that. Before we end it, let's get into the Bible right quick. Let's get into the Bible right quick before we end it. Salakia, if it's hard to read. All right, Ezekiel 37:19. It says, say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. All right. So it says, this is a metaphor, obviously. When it's talking about the stick of Joseph, Joseph right here is in reference to the northern kingdom of Israel. All right. Today, indigenous people of the Americas, so-called Hispanics, Latinos, North American Indians, etc. All right. Which is in the hand of Ephraim. All right. Ephraim being so-called Puerto Ricans today. And Puerto Ricans being the head tribe of the northern kingdom. All right. Puerto Ricans being the head tribe of so-called Hispanics, Latinos, North American Indians. And it says, I will put them with him, even with the stick of Judah. All right. Judah being so-called black people. All right. And make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. The Bible is calling for the unity of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. All right. Ezekiel 37:19 is calling for the unity of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. But we have a certain group of people, I ain't finna name them, I ain't finna shout them out. But there's a certain group of people that wants to see a division between blacks and Puerto Ricans over this whole hip-hop nonsense. There's a certain group of people that wants to see a division between blacks and Puerto Ricans. But the Bible wants to see the unity of blacks and Puerto Ricans in Ezekiel 37:19. All right, verse 21. And say unto them, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whither they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. There's only one way out of the hellish condition that we find ourselves in amongst our enemies of the other nations of people. And the only way out of here is together. All right. The only way out of hell is together. All right. Blacks and Hispanics, we're not going to make it out of hell separately. We're not going to make it out of hell separately. All right. The unity of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians is the only way out of hell. It's the only way from being at the bottom of every society we find ourselves in. All right, it says, I will bring them into their own land. All right, the only way up out of hell is together. All right, so let's drop that. And we'll end the class right here. Again, there's a certain group of people, again, I ain't finished shout them out. They know who they are. They know who they are. That want to make a division between black and brown. And they want to make a division between black and brown over hip-hop. They want to make a distinction between black and brown over hip-hop. And I just gave you the identical culture of blacks, Hispanics, and North American Indians. I gave it to you in the military. I gave it to you with the food. I gave it to you with music. I gave it to you with style. I gave it to you with rodeo and cowboy culture. I gave it to you with sports and marching band halftime shows. But these people want to make a distinction over hip hop. Like I said, that's fucking dumb. Right? I don't care. That's fucking dumb, y'all. All right. So with that, all right, we'll go ahead on and end it. We'll go ahead on and end it. All right. Like I said, every Monday history class, Tuesday night brotherhood class, Wednesday night law class, Wednesday night cry out, spare not podcast hosted by Officers of 1,000. I'm a Wonga boy and ISUPK. And with that, we'll do one courtesy salute. Shalom. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah Barakatham. Yahweh Shemalatham Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. Class dismissed.